Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Drapers Connects. My name is Graham Moran, and I am the Associate Editor here at Drapers. For those joining us for the first time, Drapers Connects is our series of online events that aims to connect the industry through Q&A discussions, panel talks, and live webinars such as this. So thank you for all joining us. In partnership with ZigZag, today we'll be discussing the issue of smarter returns. We'll cover the debate around paid versus free returns, the challenge of repeat returners, and the tactics that brands and retailers are using to turn returns into positive for their business. Thank you also to our panel for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. Let me hand over to you guys to introduce yourselves. Rachel, could we start with you?
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a Senior Product Manager within New Look. I look after our post-purchase journeys, which is everything as soon as the customer has placed the order, right through to our returns journey.
Thank you. Laura, over to you. Could you tell us what it is that you do and give us an introduction to ZigZag?
No problem. Hi, Graham. Thank you for having me. I guess I'll start by saying that I've been in and around the return space for a really long time. I spent 15 years working at the Arcadia Group and Urban Outfitters, heading up ecom and customer service. So I've really felt firsthand the impact that challenges around returns can bring. I then moved to ZigZag 4 years ago, essentially to shout really loudly about the benefits of a digital return solution. And we provide that service today for loads of global retailers, from the lovely New Look to Selfridges, Frasers Group, Inditex, the Hut Group, and many more. So I'm hoping that I can share some really good insight with you today.
Definitely. Thank you, Laura. Thank you again to our audience. If you are watching live, please feel free to send in some questions via Zoom's Q&A function, and we'll do our best to answer those throughout and at the end. So let's get started. I thought we'd start by asking actually how important are returns to customers? And at Drapers, we did some research recently as part of our Connected Consumer report, which surveyed 2,000 UK shoppers. One of the questions we asked was what is most important to them when thinking about the delivery of a fashion item that they've bought online. And 55% of those people said a free return is important to them at that purchase stage. So we found that really interesting that over half of people are already thinking about the return before they've even made the purchase, or a possible return before they've even made their purchase, which to me says that returns are very important to the shopper. We dug a bit deeper into this, and with ZigZag and with the panel, we discussed some of the things that are important to customers, whether that be flexibility around having lots of options, whether that be around making them as convenient and simple as possible, because obviously returns can be a headache. And then, of course, an issue around speed when it comes to refunds. You know, when they don't want the item, they want their money back as soon as possible. So to kick off, Rachel, could you tell us what do you think is most important to your customers when it comes to it?
I think our customers are quite demanding now. They expect a wide range of ways to return, and they also want printerless options and collect from home as standard, as more and more customers now work from home. In New Look, we're really lucky that we have over 380 stores in the UK, so we're actually able to offer customers the option to return to store as well, and that's really popular with our customers.
Excellent. Laura, as you said, you work with lots of different businesses across the industry. Could you tell us what you're seeing and kind of the commonalities across the industry?
Yeah, I think what's really important is that customers are treated as the individuals they are. And the only way you're going to achieve that is by offering multiple different return options to cater for whatever situation any individual customer might find themselves in on any given day. So they might have their dog with them, so they can't go into a shop. They might be catching the train, or they might have broken their leg, so they can't leave the house. So offering home collection and lockers alongside more typical drop-offs is really important. And I also think it plays into the fact that customers are more willing to pay for something if it works for them and it makes their life easier. So paying for a return and then having to go out of your way to drop it off is just going to be really hard to swallow. And I also just wanted to touch on a little bit of a control piece from the retailer's perspective. I think it's important to note that whilst you can offer choice, you can still influence the customer's selection if you have a cost preference, for example. So like Rachel mentioned, you can offer a return to store and you might do that for free versus other paid options. Or if you have one carrier service which costs you less, you can pop that at the top of the checkout on the carrier selection page through that returns journey. And it might be surprising to know, I don't know, but human nature tends to opt for their first option in a list. So it can be sort of really influential the way that you order your returns providers. Or you can offer more premium options only for sort of higher basket values. So there's loads that you can play with there to make sure that as a retailer, you still regain some control over the choice that you're offering.
I think that's really interesting because you can offer choice, but you can direct them in a certain way. And I think that maybe that's, it's not even having all these different choices. It's the choice that's given to them is often the best one as well. But making it seem like you're offering options is interesting. I guess that's something we'll come on to later. You touched on paid versus free, which is super interesting. We've discussed what the customer wants, but I also wanted to talk about the other side of that coin, which is kind of the implications and the realities for brands and retailers when it comes to returns. Obviously, returns are expensive for brands and retailers, and there's lots of different sources of truth around, how much a standard return does cost. But I know in preparing for this, we were talking about how even when some brands and retailers do charge for a return, that charge doesn't necessarily even cover the cost of the return to that brand or retailer. So I guess this is a good point to talk about the challenge of paid versus free returns. I would say in recent years, free returns has almost become, it's felt like a standard thing. For lots of brands and retailers, it was a standard thing that returns were just always free. But obviously, in the last couple of years, we've seen a handful of brands and retailers switching off paid returns and switching off free returns and going back to paid returns. One of the most recent examples that we've covered at Drapers is in June, Pretty Little Thing made headlines when it announced it would be charging $1.99 for all returns for all customers, including those within loyalty schemes. Obviously, this caused quite a lot of commotion on social media and was just another of those brands that made headlines. I know Zara did this a couple of years ago, H&M. There are also some other interesting strategies. I wanted to talk about ASOS in particular. They brought in a strategy where returns are free for 14 days, but after 14 days, they're paid for, which I think is quite interesting to kind of encourage people to get that return back as soon as possible. Rachel, I know you have thoughts on this. What is your opinion on paid versus free returns and kind of this, the hot topic that a lot of people are talking about at the moment?
I think in an ideal world, nobody wants to pay for returns, whether you're a customer, and as a business, you don't really want to be charging for returns either. However, the cost of returns has become so much now that businesses can't really sustain free returns, and they are choosing to pass that cost on to the customer. But what I think as well is really important is that returns rates have got so ridiculously high now, and there is a real environmental cost to returns. And what I'm really pleased to see is that when it has been covered in the media, they are really focusing on the benefits of charging for returns and the reduction in returns rates to make consumers aware of what the impact would be for these serial returners.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about New Look's strategy. Do you charge? Do you offer free returns still? What's your plan?
Yeah. So we're trying to balance the cost of returns with also staying great value for money for our customers. And we don't really want to pass on the returns costs on to all of our customers via our clothing. So what we've done is we introduced charging for postal returns in February 2023. And then we've actually recently increased that again due to an increase in carrier costs. So we have passed that on. However, we do offer free in-store returns, and we have seen a huge shift of our customers choosing to return into stores since we've introduced paid returns. But we've seen no reduction in returns rates. We've not seen a reduction in frequency of shop or reduction in average order value. So customers are happy to pay for a return, and it hasn't actually changed their shopping habits, which is disappointing in some ways, because as a business, we do want to reduce our returns rate. But it is great that the frequency of shop and average order value hasn't been impacted. And we did extensive A/B testing on this, so we are confident with the results.
Yeah, I know when we were preparing for this, we talked about there were even some customers who they're kind of happy to pay, that it wasn't that much of a deterrent in any way, shape, or form. You know,
No.
if they want the item and they don't like it, or for whatever reason, and they return it, they are actually willing to pay. It's not this big controversy that some people think it is.
I think it's about taking that risk in the first place, and if you do run it as an A/B test, you can then see what the impact will be to the business, or if there's no impact at all. I would highly recommend, if anyone is thinking about charging for returns, to do it as an A/B test, and then you can reassure your business that actually there is no impact.
Laura, again, you see this from lots of different perspectives with all the different businesses you work with. What are you seeing, and what is kind of driving this, beyond what Rachel's already said, driving this move to paid returns?
Do you know what I was just thinking of? I was just reflecting when you were introducing this kind of piece, Graham, that we call it paid returns, but actually it's not, is it? It's paid carriage. All you're doing is charging the customer to move the goods back to your warehouse. What you're not taking into consideration is the on cost of that. So the processing back into the warehouse, the staffing, all of the and the reship out again, and the loss of value on that product, depending on how long it's been out of the supply chain. So from the back of my mind, I think we've got a stat that says that actually it's closer towards £20. The true value of a return per item is huge. So yeah, I almost feel like we should rebrand the paid returns, because it's not paid returns, it's paid carriage. Yeah, so I wanted to start by saying around paid returns that it's nothing to be fearful of. It's a subject that we get asked about the most at ZigZag. So what are other retailers doing? Will conversion drop if we charge? How much should we charge? And like Rach said, Newlet did some super thorough A/B testing before they implemented paid returns, and on the price point, they played around with the price point a little bit to get it right, and conversion didn't drop and customers didn't leave. And we know that half of returns were free in peak 2023 in the UK, which tells me that half of UK customers are already paying for their returns and they're continuing to shop online. And this isn't just a UK story. We saw a 20% jump in paid returns adoption in France and Germany from early 2024 compared with the prior year. I think it's also important to talk about the fact that paid returns doesn't necessarily need to be all or nothing. So over 60% of our retailers now offer some form of paid returns, whether that be all returns, some countries, or just for some premium returns options. So it doesn't have to be that you're in and that's it, and you can't test and learn by market or by price point. And to Rachel's point, I think there's so much more of an understanding now about the cost of returns. It's in the press, it's on the news, people are more aware and more accepting than they were a few years ago. And we've actually done some consumer testing on this recently. We've just conducted a poll. We asked 2,000 e-com shoppers a specific question on this topic. Would they rather cover a part of the cost of returns by increasing the price of every item they buy, or by paying a one-off returns fee when they return an item? And a resounding 71% would rather pay a flat fee of £2.50 for every return than having the cost of the return built into the goods.
Great, thank you. We've had a lot. This has sparked a lot of questions from the audience. So I'm not going to cover them all because I know they're coming in the conversation. But one thing you kind of touched on there, Laura, and someone's asked in the audience, is around this idea of a free return or free, getting it back to where it's meant to be if we're rebranding it. How about that being like a perk? So if you're a super loyal customer, or as I touched on, there are some businesses where you can pay a flat fee at the beginning of the year and you still get free returns by being part of that loyalty scheme or whatever. Or equally, whether it could be free returns this weekend if you place your order by midnight kind of thing, then I don't think that's helping the problem. But I'm interested to, and someone in the questions of the audience is interested to know your views on that kind of, this idea of a free return being a perk. Is that beneficial, or do you do it? What's your thoughts on that, please?
Is that for Rachel?
For me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Laura, or whichever. Rachel, you start.
Okay. Well, I think at the moment it is being used. However, I think more businesses are starting to realise that they need to be looking at the profitability of a customer rather than the amount of times that they purchase with them. And generally, if you've got somebody that is a high frequency purchaser, but also a high returner, they're not going to be profitable for you as a business. So I do think that this is going to start getting phased out, and that less and less of the delivery schemes will end up including returns as well, because it's just not financially viable anymore.
Yeah. Do you think we'll ever see the end? Like, I saw a headline recently that was like the death of free return. Do you think we'll ever see the end of this, or one way or another? Do you think it is something that businesses have to deal with? Laura, why didn't you answer that one?
Oh, I don't think you can ever say never. I think free returns will always be in and around the world of online, or it will take a long time for them not to be part of the norm. And I think we might see, Rachel, I know you were kind of saying there that you think you'll see less of it as a kind of promotional driver. Because you're right, if you're offering free returns for like the month of July, I haven't seen a huge amount of that happening. You imagine we get this lovely spike in conversion and trade, but then you're going to have this huge impact of returns on the back of it. And I wonder whether actually, if you do the P&L analysis on that, it's just not worth it, because it's going to cost you a huge amount more. So I don't know. I think never say never, but I definitely think that paid returns now is so much more the norm, and so much more accepted.
I think it will depend what it is as well, because I mean, if you've bought a sofa which you haven't been able to see or sit on, it's a bit unfair to charge the customer to return that. It's a bit different when they're buying a few tops to go out in. Like a sofa is a really considered purchase and thousands of pounds. So I think it's just going to depend on the market as well of what the company are selling as to whether they would continue with free returns.
It's interesting, Laura, you say about the reason I included that idea of it sort of being a, purchase this weekend, buy this weekend and get a free return, is because it's actually from one of those brands or retailers who has now decided to charge for returns. I used to see it sometimes pop up, and yeah, so obviously they're not offering that anymore. They've realized, as you say, it's not good for business.
You see it a lot with outbound shipping, don't you? I think you see it less with returns. So I don't know, maybe a few retailers will play in that space a little bit and see how it kind of pans out for them.
One topic that again has come up quite a lot from our audience questions that I wanted to talk about, and we have slightly touched on it, is that idea of the frequent returner, or the kind of, the negative returner, whether that's people buying 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 items in various colors and sizes and returning the majority of them. I know at one point we even covered at Drapers the sort of bad trend of people, I think it was called wardrobing at the time, of people buying items, wearing them once and returning, or even just wearing them for photographs for social media and returning them regularly, weekly even. I know some people, some businesses have decided to tackle this and come out about that. I know ASOS was one who, very publicly shut down accounts of people that they thought were doing this. Rachel, what are your thoughts on kind of tackling those? Is it still a thing? And what are your thoughts on tackling those frequent returns?
So we do monitor our customer returns rates, as with any business, and we are also observing what the competitors' approaches are to this. Rather than going and outright banning customers, which I don't really think is going to solve the root cause of the problem, what we've been doing is taking the approach of asking our customers for insight. So for the ones that we know are high returners, we've been asking them why they return so much, because we feel that there's some really valuable insights that we can get from them to learn and make changes internally. Because ultimately, we wouldn't want to ban any customer. I mean, you want customers that are profitable and to keep shopping with you. So you really do need to support them in reducing the need for them to return. So anything we can learn and then take that to the business and implement, that's absolutely what we're doing.
Laura, what are your thoughts?
They echo Rachel's really closely, actually. So I think the really important thing is having the right data to draw the conclusions. I think understanding and quantifying the issue gives the power back to the retailer. They're informed, and from there they can make choices that are right for their business. I think it's important not to go, like Rachel said, gung-ho and penalise the many for the sake of the few. So let's not put in place rules that negatively impact genuine shoppers. You don't want to be targeting, for example, those customers who might appear on the surface to be really high returning, but actually when you look at a P&L on it, they're actually some of your most profitable customers.
I was going to ask that actually you touched on it, like on the surface, they may seem like a frequent returner or a negative returner. But what if they're just indecisive, or they're in between sizes, and we all know sizing is an issue. Are there any sort of data points or red flags that you look for, Rachel, to sort of identify, or is it really just about the amount versus how profitable they are as a customer?
Yeah, I think it's the amount versus how profitable they are. But I think customer shopping habits have changed over the last 5-6 years. I think we now see customers that don't go out to physical stores as much. They want to buy multiple styles for choice, and then they want to try on at home rather than going out and doing it. And then I think we've also seen that Klarna and other buy now, pay later companies have driven this customer behavior of being able to order a large amount of items, choosing the pay in 30 option, and then trying it all on at home and sending it back, and they have not spent a penny. Whereas previously, if they'd had to actually pay up front for those 20 items, they wouldn't have ordered them. So I think there has been a huge shift lately in almost encouraging customers to buy more than they need in the hope that they will keep them. But actually all that's done is increased our returns rates.
Yeah. And I know it was a fun anecdote you told me about sometimes when people have, reached £50 for a free this or free that, you've actually found that was more detrimental because people were just adding stuff for the sake of it. And sometimes it's better to not.
Yeah, so we did quite a bit of analysis recently on what happens when we do a free delivery on a promo. So we found that there's a bit of a tipping point that we were finding. So let's say the threshold was £50 and someone had bought a £40 dress, they'd add something else to the order. And let's be honest, we've all done it because we want free shipping. And then they're deliberately going to return that one item back again. There is definitely a happy medium between what that free threshold needs to be versus what it then does to our returns rate. So we've got that information now, and we know that a very high free threshold is actually just going to drive significant number of returns. So we won't be doing that anymore.
Really interesting that this idea around things that you didn't think were going to spike your returns, they can have an impact on that. Laura, we didn't come to you on your thoughts on that idea of what's this area between just being indecisive and being, a negative returner. What are your opinions on that?
I think I was reading a really interesting article last week about the Love Island effect on like young women these days. And I think we shouldn't forget that sizing is becoming increasingly difficult for retailers to manage. I was also talking to a retailer a couple of weeks ago who was telling me about, I guess, the Love Island effect. We've got young women these days who favour big busts and tiny waists and big bums. And and they're actually modifying the way that they look. So it's becoming increasingly difficult for retailers to solve for the sizing issue that was already challenging when we had kind of more standardized sizing. So I think working with customers to really understand the reason for returning and what could be done, like New Look are doing, is really important part of the process before taking any drastic action. But ultimately, if a customer is costing you money in the long term, then something needs to be done. Our research has shown that a quarter of 18 to 25-year-olds have engaged in staging or wardrobing. So they've bought items, they've worn it for an event, or they've just posed with it on social media, and they've returned it for a full refund. And at ZigZag, we can see that happening every day.
That one example I meant to mention was the retailer Opoly, who earlier this year introduced a kind of staggered return system that was, or a sliding scale, where if you return up to, I think it was 50% of the items, there's a certain charge. If you return up to 90%, there's a certain charge, and then above that is an even higher charge. Obviously, a lot of that again could be part of this conversation of, well, unfortunately, I just didn't like those items, but it's put me into the highest fee charge. So it is a tricky area, but obviously, I think a lot of that is down to segmentation and sort of breaking customers down into different pools and different kind of categories. Are you seeing this? Anyone else do this, Laura?
I think that's a really interesting way to do it, isn't it? Because that is segmenting in the moment, in isolation, and order at a time. That isn't taking that customer and how much they spend with the retailer. So it's a really interesting way of doing things. I think it's quite different from how maybe some other retailers are doing things. I think there's so much flexibility retailers can play with in this segmentation space. And not only in relation to differing returns fees, I think having a smart return solution, a digital solution, means you can segment customers into different kinds of returns journeys, displaying different return options to different customer groups based on a number of different things, like, how profitable they are for you, or however you want to do it. So you're really highly returning customers, for example, if they're a big problem for you, they could be directed to call customer service before they can generate a return label, for example. So there's loads of space to play in, I think, for retailers in that segmentation space, and treating your customers differently based on how much value they have to you as a business.
Thank you. Before we move on from this topic, there's a couple of questions from the audience that I thought were quite interesting. One of them is for you, Laura, around the more kind of premium and luxury end of the market, where you're paying, well, the question says £200 for a handbag, but I think it could be even more, like £2,000 for a handbag. Do you really is it a luxury experience to then have to pay to send that back, or I guess the question is it a luxury experience that it's free? I don't know. What are you seeing at that end of the spectrum? Is there kind of a different approach to returns at the luxury end?
I think it depends. Again, I don't think you can treat luxury en masse. We work with a selection of higher end retailers. So we work with Mulberry, we work with Selfridges, we worked with Matches Fashion, and they all did different things. So Matches charge for returns, Selfridges don't charge for returns. So I don't think it's necessarily about luxury. I think what's really important is making the journey easy, making it smooth. So if the return is paid, for example, we offer Google Pay and Apple Pay. So if you do have to do that in the journey, it's really easy and seamless for the customer to do it. Yeah, I don't think there's a one size fits all in that space.
Someone's also asked an interesting question around sort of how it works in terms of faulty or broken items. Do you still charge for that return? And if not, have you seen an increase in people faking that it's faulty to then get the return? Is that anything you've experienced, Rachel?
So we do offer free returns for faulty, wrong items sent and arrived late. We monitor it really closely. We haven't seen an increase in that. And of course, what it does mean, though, is if one of the items was faulty, they can return the whole order for free. We wouldn't start charging per item. But no, we've not seen customers taking advantage of that. Genuinely, when items do come back as faulty, they are faulty.
I think that's really interesting, right? So I think there is some fear around that space of paid returns. And what if we do this and we make, so with the ZigZag platform, you can make certain return reason codes paid, some free. And actually what New Look have shown is they've gone into a lot of these things, a lot of heavy testing in the background, but they've really played in that space. And actually often your answer to these things, Rach, is it was fine. We did it and it was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a backup for this. It would have been that customers who had a faulty item would have needed to contact customer care, but we've not needed to go down that route.
Somebody in the questions has suggested the term subsidized returns as a more appealing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of you are sending them in, but just a reminder, if you are watching live, please do send in questions for the panel. Now, to move on to hopefully a more positive take on returns, I wanted to discuss if there are any positives to returns, what they might be, and particularly around the data that you can glean from returns, return rates, items that are returned. Rachel, what ways have you used data from returns to kind of impact the wider business?
So one of the main reasons why we implemented the ZigZag returns portal is because we just weren't capturing the data as to why customers were returning an item. We had paper slips, they would put it in the parcel, but they didn't actually fill it out. Or if they did, it nearly always was unwanted. And so it was really useful for us to move to a portal where we now capture 100% of our returns through the portal, even if they're dropping off in store. And what we have now done is we've created a squad. We have a data scientist who's within that squad so that we can utilize this data that we get for our ZigZag returns, but also through customer reviews as well, through our ratings and review system. And we use that to support our buying teams. So we've got a dashboard which uses various different attributes, such as the fabric, the manufacturer who's making the product, what the size is, the style, color, etc. And what this does is it starts to rank the risk of the product being returned used on historical data, and it will rag it as high, medium or low. And then what the idea of that is that the buying team can then build up their season clothing to ensure that they haven't got too many high risk items. And as a fashion retailer, we obviously do need to buy these new styles which customers maybe haven't seen before, and there is going to be a period of adoption which is going to have a high returns rate. But you need to do that as a fashion retailer. You can't just shy away from any new styles. But what that means is that the buying team can then spread the risk across all of their products. And what we can also do now as well is we can see if we start to see a product that's returning higher than expected, or if it's returning higher in certain sizes or colours, we can quickly identify that, bring it in, inspect it, and then deal with it as necessary. Whereas before, we would be selling the same product over and over and over again and not really understanding what the returns rate was on that specific product. So it's been so useful for us.
Yeah, that sounds... somebody in the comments has just said a data scientist is an amazing idea. And I think that
we're so lucky. We're so lucky that we've got one. But honestly, she's been worth her weight in gold. And I think she's paid for herself already with the data that we're getting.
Yeah. Laura, what are you seeing? What are your thoughts on the different ways that returns, particularly data from returns, can have a positive impact?
I think Rachel just stole all of the things I wanted to say. They are such a model retailer in terms of the amount that they grab hold of the data available and really make meaningful change in the businesses. I think lots of retailers just don't have the time or the resource or the capacity, but you look so super focused in that area. It's just great to work with them and kind of see the output of what they're doing. I think just to echo what Rachel's saying, old labeling the box return solutions. They don't get completed properly. The paperwork's never filled in properly. Customer just uses the top option, as I said earlier. And it means that retailers they just don't know what's coming back and when it's coming back until it arrives at the warehouse, and they're not staffed to deal with it, and it's all just really messy. A digital returns platform collects all of the information to help retailers in their decision making. And Rach talked about such smart things that they're doing with that data, like driving their buying decisions, looking at the factories that they work with, to just stop the problem way further upstream. So it's so much more advanced now than just size guides. It's so much bigger than that now. I think knowing what is coming back and when it's coming back, from the absolute moment that customer clicks to register that return, and they're still sat at their chair and the retailer already knows what's coming back, it just means that they can act super quickly, like Rach said, to identify SKUs with defects and just get them out of the warehouse, so that we're constantly not having this cycle of sale return. We're managing to break that cycle. So yeah, it's really exciting to see kind of the stuff that New Look and Rach are doing.
Does that also have an impact on being able to, again, looking at a positive way, an impact on being able to resell something quicker, because you're expecting it? That idea of, I know, Rachel, you were talking about being so fast moving, the products, they're in and out, and if you miss it, you miss it, kind of thing. So does that, and it might not, I'm just thinking, does that sort of help in that way of getting things back out for sale quicker?
So by us introducing the ecom returns, in the being able to accept them back into the store, we actually send everything now back to our DC and restock it onto our website. Before, what was happening was we had the sort of fragmentation system where customers would take some items back to store. They would end up being in the store, hanging around. You'd have one of this, couple of this. That hasn't really worked for us. So what we actually did when we introduced the returns portal was we made a conscious decision that everything would go back to store, back from store if it was an ecom order, to our distribution center. So we have daily returns back to our DC, and then it gets stocked back straight away. So it's improved our online availability, but also means you don't have that messy fragmentation that you would get in store before.
I wonder whether one day we might get to the point where you could resell, you could list for sale an item that had just been registered for a return, and where that process works so fluidly that you could sell it before you went back and it arrived back and you'd ship it back out again. It would be great to get to that kind of stage, because every day that an item is out of stock on the website, particularly in a fast fashion world like New Look, you're heading towards markdown and you're losing value on that product.
That would definitely be the goal, in the future. And I think Next do that brilliantly. They have a really slick system with that.
Yeah, I was going to say there are some people who are trying to operate in that way, but I know I had a discussion with someone about this, and a lot of the challenge, well, there's many challenges with it, but one of the challenges with it is that you can't, everyone wants next day delivery or a set, 2 days delivery, 3-day delivery, but that sort of, well, it's over here and it's coming back to here and then it'll come to you eventually. It's kind of speeding that bit up and making customers be okay with maybe waiting a little bit longer if they get something that they really want. But that's for another discussion. I also wanted to cover in this positive light what we've called save the sale ideas or strategies, particularly around things like exchanges or refund to gift cards, which obviously inspire the customer to kind of respend with you, keeps the money in the business. A big part of this is encouraging return to store. Obviously, not everyone can do that if they don't have bricks and mortar stores, but Rachel does. New Look do. So, Rachel, could you tell us how, what you have in place now is an online return is paid for, but an in-store return is free.
Mm-hmm.
How are you encouraging that kind of return to store concept?
Yeah, sure. So before we introduced paid postal returns, we didn't accept all of our items that we sold online back into store. So we changed the policy, and absolutely everything that you buy online now can go back into store, including brands. And what that has done is it's made return to store our biggest return method. So it's great for footfalls. We're really pleased that we've got this going back into store. But it does drive additional workload. So what we've done is we've collaborated with ZigZag, and we have introduced returns drop-off kiosks. So we have them currently in half of our estate, and we will be introducing more shortly. But it means customers don't need to queue to return a parcel now. So what they basically do is they go onto the portal, they create a return. When they've created it, they get an email, they pop into store, they click on a link in the email, which opens up some ZigZag software, and the customer returns the drop off. It triggers a confirmation email, and it also updates our BI system in the back end, so we know what items are coming back to our distribution centre and what store it was dropped off in. We found that that's been really great. So it's reducing the need to queue. It's also meant customers who are in a real rush can just drop their parcel off. But also it's because it's a smooth experience. People are spending a bit longer in the store now, doing some shopping and having a browse. So that's been really successful. And like I say, we are planning to roll some more of those out in the future.
It sounds, going back to what I said right at the beginning, the speed, the hassle-free convenience, that all sounds exactly what people want. Laura, what are you seeing in terms of this, get return to store, get people back into store kind of thing?
I think kind of Rach mentioned at the beginning that they've got close to 400 stores. We don't have many retailers. I don't think there are many retailers that have that level of store estate. But retailers do have, a lot of them do have bricks and mortar stores, and I think they're underutilized in terms of retailers signposting customers the fact that they can return it to a store and it is free. We know that only 14% of UK customers would opt for a paid online return if they were also offered a free in-store return. So there's a real drive there from customers as well to want to go back into a store and drop it off for free. The way that we do it with New Look and other retailers is that you show the store map as a return option, so the customer can click onto that, they can see where all of the stores are, so it's an option that they select at checkout, so it's part of the returns journey for them. And as Rach said, offering that option increases footfall, the propensity for repeat spend. So it's all good. It's kind of win-win. And what it's meant for New Look is, back in the day, they weren't getting the returns reasons for all of that store volume, all of those store returns. Then they've now got perfect data capture across their digital and their store returns. So really, it's a win-win.
And like Laura said as well, we've actually ordered our carriers on our returns portal so that return to store is at the top of the page. And we did some testing on that, and we did actually find that if it was lower down, people weren't choosing that one. They do tend to go with your top option. So it's definitely worth, if you have got a returns portal, really thinking about the order of what carriers and what methods you've got in that list.
Great advice. Someone in the audience questions has touched on this, and I know, Rachel, you mentioned you have the kind of return kiosks, but the question is around, okay, great, we're offering free returns in store, so we're driving this increase of traffic into store. Obviously, that's a positive, but can it have negatives? Is it creating queues? I guess your kiosks definitely help with kind of separating those two out. But have you seen any other challenges with that sort of increase of footfall into store who are there for returns?
It does drive additional queues, yeah, which is why we've put the kiosks in. But I think you have to trade that off with what your conversion is in store. And we know that when customers go into store, it's like that girl math, isn't it? I've just dropped off a £35 dress, so therefore I've now got £35 to spend. So we do see that mentality, and we do see customers choosing to purchase when they are in store. And we've also tried to utilize our click and collect as well. So if customers are in store and they've picked up a click and collect, we'll offer them to try it on there and then they can return it straight away if they need to. But also it might be like, we've got these shoes that go with that outfit, or have you seen we've got this bag to go with it? So our store store staff are there to try and upsell as well.
I know you were saying, Rach, we asked you, is there a way to quantify like how much additional benefit you get from it? But you kind of saying it's really hard to do it.
It's really hard. Yeah.
You know it's there, but you just can't quite get your hands on the number.
No.
You mentioned there, Rachel, about that idea of click and collect and trying to get people to try things on in store. I recently spoke to a retailer who's considering not packaging the item up, so it is the item on the hanger, and you literally say, would you like to go and try it on now, or would you like me to wrap it up for you? And their thinking is that more people will just say, oh yeah, I'll just go try it on quickly then, and that obviously has a positive impact if they want to return it straight away, or they, as you say, upsell to other items.
And also great environmentally, because you're not wasting bags unnecessarily.
Definitely. Part of this Save the Sale that I mentioned is refund and refund gift card, which I briefly mentioned it, and it's caused some controversy in the audience questions, because I actually kind of agree with one person in the audience. But Rachel, what are your thoughts on refund to gift card? How are you encouraging them, and what are you seeing from your customers in terms of wanting to do that?
So really excitingly, we are literally today in the final stages of live testing to offer customers the option to have a faster refund through an e-gift card rather than their original payment method. So this is via the ZigZag portal. I feel like I'm always going on about testing, but we are very passionate about testing in New Look. And we tested this for a fake door test at the beginning of the year. So what we did was we presented the option to customer if they wanted the refund onto gift card or refund back to their original payment method. And the ones that then chose the gift card then just got a message saying that it wasn't available yet, and we were just doing some validation. And we saw an uptake of 3% of customers choosing this option, which probably doesn't actually sound like that much, but we're actually talking millions of pounds a year within New Look. So we've gone ahead and built this, and we do think that this is going to be great for customers who know that they are going to order shortly again online, or they're going to go into store because they are an e-gift card, so they can use it either or. And it means that for us as a business, we retain the refund, of course. And what we've also built is the capability to offer incentivization. So we can offer an extra 10 or 20% additional in the future. And how we see this is going to start unlocking opportunities for us, for our loyalty customers. For example, we might offer them immediate refunds when the return is created or when it's dropped off into store. So there's loads of opportunities for us. So we're really excited about getting this live and seeing what the uptake is on it.
I know you have thoughts on exchanges as well. Tell us your approach to exchanges.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it depends on the business model. And I think for us, we have very fast moving ranges, particularly like our celeb collaborations. They sell through really, really quickly. So for us, I think we're going to struggle to have the stock available for an exchange. We've not ruled it out, so potentially we would do it as a future test. There's certain lines like denim, winter coats and boots that we do keep in stock for quite a long time, but we aren't planning on doing it at the moment.
Interesting. Laura, what's your view on exchanges, gift cards, returns, etc.?
So I think, as Rachel alluded to, maybe it's something that's kind of a secondary thought for them that might come later with the speed at which they sell through their inventory. But for lots of businesses, live exchanges make sense. It really targets that issue of sizing, which is the top reason for return, and it's a really easy solve. We know that nearly 80% of the revenue lost during the returns process is due to sizing. And we saw so many retailers whose exchange process is really manual and involves, we have to return one item and then you can buy another item and we might give you a shipping free, but it's a bit clunky. We know that over 80% of customers want an easy way to exchange their item online. And by working with a partner who can take your live stock feed and offer sensible alternatives, it doesn't necessarily need to be a different size or colour of the same item, but maybe same price or loads of different options. Someone that can do that with you, it just got a huge potential to save the sale. And then if we're talking refund to gift card or to store credit, then nearly 60% of customers would happily take a refund this way. I think Amazon really drove kind of that behavior in offering instant refunds if you did this, or I think so. For me, the Amazon effect, we're really kind of seeing that now. We get asked about refund to gift card a lot. Rach talked about incentivizing uptake, and it is really effective. I think most of the customers of ZigZag who offer refund to gift card or refund to credit do incentivize with an extra 10% or 20%, sometimes even higher for some retailers, or they incentivize with that instant refund. I think what is really interesting about refund to store credit, and I think it's a stat that not many people know, is that customers who opt for this refund method spend nearly 50% more than the gift card balance on their next purchase. So Rach, it might be just 3% of your customers, but they might spend 50% more than
we see that as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you guys so much. Well, I just looked at the time and I didn't realize how late it was. So I'm going to go quickly over to some audience questions. There's quite a few here around issues you touched on. Putting the option at the top that you may want, and whether that's a negative or positive thing for the customer. Do they just pick it because it's there and it's not necessarily, they don't think through it? But particularly down to the reason for returns, and how any advice around kind of really getting the best out of those. Rachel, you talked about having the portal and the options where people have to click them. Are they just clicking the top one because it's easiest? Like, any advice around that and really making them as effective as possible?
Well, the great thing about ZigZag Portal is it reorders the return reasons every time somebody comes in. So there is no top reason and bottom reason. It's different every single time. So I don't believe that customers are just choosing the top one, because we have seen a massive shift in what our returns reasons were from the paper system to now our portal system. And I would say that our data would suggest that actually the portal is correct, as opposed to customers just picking the top one, because otherwise they would all be equally spaced, because the top one is different every single time somebody goes in to create a return. And it's not only different on each customer, it's different on every item. So if I was returning 5 items, the top reason would be different all 5 times.
Mm-hmm. Laura, any?
Rach, do my job for me.
I know. I just thought that then. I thought that must be the perfect ZigZag answer.
Randomizing, very important. I think what's also really nice, we've got functionality so that if you have, I don't know, you can do this by reason code. So if you have a real problem with too big or doesn't suit me, you can, for that specific return reason, you can ask the customer for more details. So you can make it mandatory that the customer completes a free text box. So tell me why. Why is it too big? Where is it too big? Why doesn't it suit you? What would you do differently? So I think that's nice. And actually looking at the anecdotal feedback that comes back from that is just really interesting to see. And I think it adds real value to retailers, and our retailers can switch that on and off as they want. They might just test it for a week and just see the data, and then they might feed that back into the buying teams and then switch it off. Yeah, really interesting.
Great. Rachel, I think you did touch on this, but you answered it. You said it very quickly, so the audience might have missed. A couple of people have asked around. I think they're a bit skeptical around the idea of refund to gift card and whether people will actually do that, and maybe they just want their money back. And you did mention people who know they're going to be shopping. It kind of makes sense. But what are you guys doing? And Laura, maybe to you, any advice on other things, ways to incentivize them to do that? I think the new look option is that you get that back quicker than you would into your account. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is there any other way? Is that the incentive? Is there any other way of doing that? I know you sort of mentioned maybe discount as well. Refund to gift card and you get 10% off. Is that something?
Well, no, it'll be extra. So if you're getting a £30 refund, we will top it up with maybe an extra 10%, which means you'd get 33, or 20%, you get 36 back.
And you can do that at a monetary value. So you can say, I want to make it £5, or I want to make it 10%. So there's a couple of ways that you can play.
Yeah, true.
Interesting. There's been a couple of mentions of this, so I thought I'd kind of round it up into one and just kind of ask your approach, Rachel, around, obviously you touched on it at the beginning as well, the idea of sustainability and the environmental impact of returns and the impact on business, but also the environment. What is New Look's approach to this?
So it's something we're really conscious of, and over the last 18 months that we've had our post-purchase journey squad live, we've been looking to improve sustainability as much as possible and reduce CO2 emissions. So we've removed the dispatch note in the parcel because it's all on the transactional emails. We offer fully paperless returns via ZigZag. We've removed the handles from our delivery and our click and collect bags. And at the moment, we're trialling sending in some click and collects into store without the outer bag and asking customers to bring their own bag when collecting. So it still comes in the thin, clear bag, but it doesn't come in the outer bag. And of course, like one of the great things for us is over 60% of our returns are now going back via our stores, which is our greenest return solution, as well as the fastest, because we have a lorry coming in every day anyway to bring our click and collects in, and then it takes back all of our orders back to the DC. So that's really great for us that we've moved from 15% of returns going back via the store to 60 using that method.
Definitely, that's amazing. I think as well, I've noticed a few brands and retailers sort of offering options. Like this is, I can't remember the exact, but this is like our more sustainable return or delivery option, but it's a bit slower or it takes longer. I guess that comes back to the options point we made at the beginning. Laura, do you have any input on this topic?
I do. We know that 70% of customers request a paperless return option. So it's really rare now that someone opts to print at home. I can't remember the last time I owned a printer. And even things as simple as lockers and drop-off points being typically 3 times more sustainable than home collections. I don't think that's necessarily particularly known. That centralised location means less trips for the delivery driver, no missed collections if people aren't home. But yeah, like I said, I think there's still a long way to go in terms of customer education. We know that 30% of customers still don't know what carrier services are most sustainable. What we're seeing now growing quite quickly is packageless returns, where you can go to a post office or a drop-off point and you don't have to package your goods. They'll do it for you. And there's loads of benefits of that. Obviously, packaging is still involved. But if you're sending something back internationally, you're going to be charged volumetrically for the size of the box that you put that in. And we see that quite a lot. We often have conversations with the retailers who say, well, how are our returns so big? And it's because you can't control what box the customer puts their return back into. Sometimes they're massive and there's loads of air in them. So I think there's some really smart things that some of the carriers are doing there to help reduce wastage as part of that journey.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've ran perfectly out of time at 2:00, but that was such an interesting discussion, and thank you to our audience for all your interesting questions as well. That really added to the conversation. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing all your insight, and you, Laura, thank you for sharing all your expertise. Thank you to our partner, ZigZag, and thank you to our audience for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.